No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic. We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
What's up, guys? It's your boy, Benny. Dr. Fauci is probably headed to prison, and we can prove it. Bombshell testimony being given today at the United States Capitol is incriminating Dr. Fauci. His scientists are turning on him, and this is not good. Let's see where we are on the COVID origins hoax right now.
Long assessed, going all the way back to the summer of 2021, that the origin of the pandemic was likely a lab incident in Wuhan.
Okay, so that's the director of the FBI saying, yeah, it was a lab in Wuhan. Here's CNN saying that the Department of Energy now says it was a lab leak from Wuhan. And also Congress has now passed a bill saying that Congress and the federal government must disclose their findings on the origins of COVID-19. They were ordered to do so under Donald Trump, and now they must disclose all of those findings. So why do we say that this is a hoax about where COVID's origins came from? Well, because demonstrable amounts of evidence show that Dr. Fauci tried to cover up his involvement, and now that is all coming crumbling down. Former CDC Director slams gain-of-function research, probably caused the greatest pandemic in history. I think it probably caused the greatest pandemic in history, and Dr. Fauci funded it. This man's name is Robert Redfield. Who's Robert Redfield? Robert Redfield is an American virologist who served as the CDC Director, the all-powerful CDC Director for a couple of years here. He is a very smart man. He has huge credentials and clearly knows what he's doing. Georgetown University, Columbia University, laboratories, investigated involvement in retroviruses, human disease, Bachelor of Science, College of Arts and Science, University, Georgetown University School of Medicine, was awarded a Doctor of Medicine in 1977. The dude knows what he's doing. He also served in the military. Robert Redfield is not to be trifled with. So when Robert Redfield says that you lied to the American people and you withheld the origins of COVID that you funded, you know that is about to hit the fan.
Dr. Redfield, did you agree, in your opinion, with Dr. Anderson's assessment at the time that this virus did look engineered?
I was concerned because of the presence of the furin cleavage site that we've talked about. And I think it's important to understand what that cleavage site does. That cleavage site totally changes the orientation of the binding domain of COVID. So it now, which could not see the ACE2 receptor, which is a human receptor, it totally changes the orientation now, so it has high affinity for a human receptor. So that furin cleavage site bothered me. It didn't seem that it belonged there. And then when you look at the sequences that it used, and it's beyond the committee, but I know many of you have looked into it, the sequences that they used in those 12 nucleotides for arginine were the arginine sequences, nucleotide triplet, that coded for the human arginine. So why did this virus have the arginine sequences for human there, not bat? It was very disconcerting to me. It looked like this virus was engineered.
Was this, what you're observing and speaking of, is this something that would be in line with gain-of-function research and the capabilities it would provide to the virus?
Yeah. I mean, basically, this lab published in 2014 that they accomplished in this, allowing the coronaviruses that they were working with in the lab to bind to the ACE2 receptor in humanized mice. And the only way they did that was by reorienting the binding domain.
So he's a lot smarter than me. I've looked into this. Ladies and gentlemen, what they did was they added specific proteins. He talked there about the human arginine, not the bat arginine. They used the backbone of a bat coronavirus to build out human protein receptors so that this thing could be transmissible to humans. This is a mutant virus that they created inside of a lab with funding from Dr. Fauci, but Robert Redfield was not done running Dr. Fauci over with Mack truck yet.
The pandemic did not start in January at the seafood market. We now know there was infections all the way back into September. This was a narrative that was decided that they were going to say this came from the wet market, and they were going to do everything they could to support it, to negate any discussion about the possibility that this came from a laboratory.
I got 20 seconds left. Dr. Fauci was affirmatively told in an email that
NIAID had a monetary relationship with the Wuhan Institute through EcoHealth Alliance. He was told this in January 27th of 2020. Do you think that Dr. Fauci intentionally lied under oath to Senator Paul when he vehemently denied NIH's funding of gain-of-function research?
I think there's no doubt that NIH was funding gain-of-function research.
Is it likely that American tax dollars funded the gain-of-function research that created this virus?
I think it did, not only from NIH, but from the State Department, USAID, and from DOD.
I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Holy mother. Wow. I mean, it is incredible to listen to a former CDC director sit there and say, yeah, Dr. Fauci funded gain-of-function research. This came from gain-of-function research. Here's the scientific proof behind all of that. And our Department of Defense and our medical establishment funded the creation of COVID. Did Dr. Fauci lie? Robert Redfield says this.
Emails following the conference call, 4 of the 11 scientists told Fauci that they all found the genetic sequence inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory, basically what you're saying. However, just 3 days later, these 4 scientists had drafted a paper arguing the exact opposite, and that's now the infamous proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. Our investigations show that this paper was prompted by Dr. Fauci, among others, with a goal to disprove the lab leak theory. What is the likelihood that these scientists came across additional information just 3 days after making these statements to conclude with such certainty that COVID-19 came from nature instead of the lab leak that they thought it was 3 days earlier?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. Again, I've said this before, that this whole approach that was taken on February 1st and subsequently in the month of February, if you really want to be truthful, it's antithetical to science.
Thank you.
Science has debate, and they squashed any debate.
They squashed debate. They lied to cover their tracks. Dr. Fauci lied when he went before Congress and spoke to Rand Paul and said that he did not fund gain-of-function research. We have the tape. We have the clip. You've seen Dr. Fauci do millions of hours of interviews. How many times have you seen him shake?
I want to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible to result in SARS-CoV-2.
Cause the pandemic. We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
admit the truth.
And you implying...
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come...
How many times have you seen him shake? Well, he's shaking because of this. 18 U.S. Code 1001 statements. False statements before Congress. Anyone who falsifies or conceals or covers up by any trick, scheme, or device, material fact, makes materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statements, makes use of false writing or documentation before Congress, they shall be fined and imprisoned. Not more than 5 years, but it could be up to 8 years depending on the severity of the lie. Do you think that 7 million dead bodies equals a very severe lie? I certainly do, and so does Rand Paul, who's coming for Judgment Day on Dr. Fauci.
Pushing this study so hard to get everybody away from what he called the shiny object.
It was an elaborate cover-up, and it began in January of 2020. The reason Dr. Fauci didn't want any attention drawn to this or to his funding of the lab is that ultimately he would have culpability. Ultimately, there's a responsibility because for years he had advocated for gain-of-function research. He's even quoted as saying in 2012, if a pandemic should occur, if a scientist should be bitten by an animal and the virus gets out of the lab, it would be worth the knowledge. But in late January 2020, there's a flurry of emails that go on all night long till 3 a.m. The next day, there's a video conference, and 8 good friends of Fauci, scientists, famous virologists come together and they say, Dr. Fauci, we think this leaked from the lab. The virus, the sequence of the RNA is suspicious. We think it came from the lab. And at the end of the phone call, they all became convinced otherwise, and they agreed to write an article saying something the opposite of what they were saying in private. So yes, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins and others orchestrated a cover-up. There's emails between Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci in which Dr. Collins says this wouldn't be good for China. This wouldn't be good for science. meaning that it wouldn't be good for the business of science, for the money that changes hands. There's so much going on here, and when the American public finally find out, I mean, there's going to be such dissatisfaction in this country like you can't believe. For example, we know that the NIH gave money to American universities who then gave it to military researchers. These are researchers with the title of general and colonel in the People's Liberation Army. Our universities gave NIH money to them to do military research. This is a real problem. When the truth gets out there, when this is finally declassified, it's going to be explosive.
It's going to be explosive. And as explosive as the Wuhan laboratory, which can't keep their viruses in. Or, ladies and gentlemen, maybe they did it on purpose. We don't know. It'd sure be nice to know, actually. It sure would be nice to understand what's going on. Thank God for some still honest scientists in Washington, D.C. Robert Redfield saying that Dr. Fauci caused the greatest pandemic in history. Good. It's about time, ladies and gentlemen. It's about time. Time for some truth and some reconciliation, and then the Nuremberg trials for people like Dr. Fauci for committing one of the greatest crimes against humanity, well, that I've certainly seen in my lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, we're fighting for a better and more free America. We're fighting right alongside with you. My name's Benny Johnson. See ya. Thank you for watching. Our channel is here to meme the libs until they cry and then to meme them crying. Their tears, they taste just like sweet, delicious ice cream. Salty, too. We ridicule the establishment and the libs because of you. Your support keeps us going. So if you like what you saw, please punch the subscribe button, click like, and ring the little bell so that you know when we're live. Don't you want to know when we're live? And make sure that you subscribe to our email list just in case the plug gets pulled, as tends to happen. If you want to see more of our videos, click here or here. My name is Benny Johnson. Stay free, Base Patriots.